Today's reading is from Machiavelli's Thought by Count Carlos Sforza. This is of the different kinds of republics and of what kind the Roman Republic was. I will leave aside what might be said of cities from which their birth had been subject to a foreign power, and will speak only of those whose origin has been independent, and which from the first govern themselves by their own laws, whether as republics or as principalities, and whose constitution and laws have differed as their origin. Some have had at the very beginning, or soon after, a legislator who, like Lycurgus with the Lacedaemonians, gave them by a single act all the laws they needed. It is a great good fortune for a republic to have a legislator sufficiently wise to give her laws so regulated that, without the necessity of correcting them, they afford security to those who live under them. Sparta observed her laws for more than 800 years without altering them and without experiencing a single dangerous disturbance. Unhappy, on the contrary, is that republic which, not having at the beginning fallen into the hands of a sagacious and skilful legislator, is herself obliged to reform her laws. More unhappy still is that republic from which the first has diverged from a good constitution. And that republic is furthest from it whose vicious institutions impede her progress and make her leave the right path that leads to a good end. For those who are in that condition can hardly ever be brought into the right road. Those republics, on the other hand, that started without having even a perfect constitution, but made a fair beginning and are capable of improvement, such republics, I say, may perfect themselves by the aid of events. It is true, however, that such reforms are never effected without danger, for the majority of men never willingly adopt any new law tending to change the constitution of the state unless the necessity of the change is clearly demonstrated. And as such a necessity cannot make itself felt without being accomplished with danger, the republic may easily be destroyed before having perfected its constitution. Having proposed to myself to treat of the kind of government established at Rome, and of the events that led to its perfection, I must at the beginning observe that some of the writers on politics distinguish three kinds of government, viz., the monarchical, the aristocratic, and the democratic, and maintain that the legislators of a people must choose from these three the one that seems to them most suitable. Other authors, wiser according to the opinion of many, count 6 kinds of government, 3 of which are very bad, and 3 good in themselves, but so liable to be corrupted that they become absolutely bad. The 3 good ones are those which we have just named. The 3 bad ones result from the degradation of the other 3, and each of them resembles its corresponding original, so that the transition from one to the other is very easy. Thus, monarchy becomes tyranny, aristocracy degenerates into oligarchy, and the popular government lapses readily into licentiousness. No precautions can prevent either one of these 3 that are reputed good from degenerating into its opposite kind. So great are in these the attractions and resemblances between the good and the evil. Chance has given birth to these different kinds of governments amongst men. For at the beginning of the world the inhabitants were few in number, and lived for a time dispersed like beasts. As the human race increased, the necessity for uniting themselves for defense made itself felt. The better to attain this object, they chose the strongest and most courageous from amongst themselves, and placed him at their head, promising to obey him. Thence they began to know the good and the honest, and to distinguish them from the bad and the vicious. They set to work to make laws, and to institute punishments for those who contravened them. Such was the origin of justice. But when they began to make sovereignty hereditary and non-elective, the children quickly degenerated from their fathers, and so far from trying to equal their virtues, They considered that a prince had nothing else to do other than excel all the rest in luxury, indulgence, and every other variety of pleasure. The prince consequently soon drew upon himself the general hatred. An object of hatred, he naturally felt fear. Fear in turn dictated him to precautions and wrongs, and thus tyranny quickly developed itself. Such were the beginning and causes of disorders, conspiracies, and plots against the sovereigns, set on foot, not by the feeble and timid, but by those citizens who, surpassing the others in grandeur of soul, in wealth, and in courage, could not submit to the outrages and excesses of their princes. These, abhorring the very name of prince, constituted themselves a new government, and at first, bearing in mind the past tyranny, they governed in strict accordance with the laws which they had established themselves, preferring public interests to their own, and to administer and protect with greatest care both public and private affairs. The children succeeded their fathers, and ignorant of the changes of fortune, having never experienced its reverses, soon caused the aristocratic government to degenerate into an oligarchic tyranny, regardless of all civil rights. They soon, however, experienced the same fate as the first tyrant. The people, disgusted with their government, placed themselves at the command of whoever was willing to attack them, and this disposition soon produced an avenger who was sufficiently well seconded to destroy them. Popular government was therefore resolved upon, and it was so organized that the authority should not again fall into the hands of a prince or a small number of nobles. And as all governments are at first looked up to with some degree of reverence, the popular state also maintained itself for a time, though it was never of long duration, and lasted generally only about as long as the generation that had established it, for it soon ran into that kind of license which inflicts injury upon public as well as private interests. They returned anew to the government of a prince, and from this they generally lapsed again into anarchy, step by step, in the same manner and from the same causes as we have indicated in the above paragraphs. Such is the circle which all republics are destined to run through. Seldom, however, do they come back to the original form of government, which results from the fact that their duration is not sufficiently long to be able to undergo these repeated changes and preserve their existence. I say, then, that all kinds of government are defective, those three which we have qualified as good because they are too short-lived, and the three bad ones because of their inherent viciousness. Thus, sagacious legislators, knowing the vices of each of these systems of government by themselves, have chosen one that should partake of all of them combined. Amongst those justly celebrated for having established such a constitution, Lycurgus, beyond doubt, merits the highest praise. He organized the government of Sparta in such a manner that, in giving to the king, the nobles, and the people each their portion of authority and duties, he created a government which maintains itself for over 800 years in the most perfect tranquillity, and reflected infinite glory upon this legislator. On the other hand, the constitution given by Solon to the Athenians, by which he established only a popular government, was of such short duration that before his death he saw the tyranny of Pisistratus arise. But let us come to Rome. Although she had no legislator like Lycurgus, who constituted her government, at her very origin, in a manner to secure her liberty for a length of time, yet the disunion which existed between the Senate and the people produced such extraordinary events that chance did for her what the laws had failed to do. Thus, if Rome did not attain the first degree of happiness, she at least had the second. Her first institutions were doubtless defective, but they were not in conflict with the principles that might bring her to perfection. For Romulus and all the other kings gave her many and good laws, well suited even to a free people. But as the object of these princes was to found a monarchy, and not a republic, Rome, upon becoming free, found herself lacking all those institutions that are most essential to liberty, which her kings had not established. And although these kings lost their empire, for the reasons and in the manner which we have explained, yet those who expelled them appointed immediately 2 consuls in place of the king, and thus it was found that they had banished the title of king from Rome, but not the regal power. The government, composed of consuls and a senate, had but 2 of the 3 elements of which we have spoken, the monarchical and the aristocratic. The popular power was wanting. In the course of time, however, the insolence of the nobles, produced by the causes which we shall see further on, induced the people to rise against the others. The nobility, to save a portion of their power, were forced to yield a share of it to the people. It was then that the tribunes of the people were created, which strengthened and confirmed the republic, being now composed of 3 elements of which we have spoken above. Fortune favored her so that, although the authority passed successively from kings and nobles to the people, by the same degrees and for the same reasons that we have spoken of, yet the royal authority was never entirely abolished to bestow it upon the nobles, and these were never entirely deprived of their authority to give it to the people, but a combination was formed of the 3 powers, which rendered the constitution perfect.